Okay, Sally, you're on.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I know we have a little competition tonight, but I'm so glad that you're here with us because we have some wonderful tellers for you. And you can always take the convention and then watch us now, and we're happy to have you. So let's go on to an evening of storytelling and wonderful sharing. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sally. Okay, I'm Liz, a co-host The Swap with Sally and with Dana. And I think if I don't know if there's anybody here for the first time. If you are, we're so happy that you are here. And we're going to jump right in because our first and featured teller he's got a lot going on tonight. He's got a group of theater students, young youth theater students in his living room. And he's going to be working with them. So I am going to jump in and introduce him right away. It's such a thrill to introduce you, Kirk. I'll first read from his blurb, and then I just have to add a little personal, is that if you go online and you read about Kirk, he'll tell you that he's loved stories all his life. He's loved literature, he's loved theater, and he's loved the visual arts. He is a Renaissance creative man, and music too. He incorporates music into his storytelling. Maybe not tonight, but you got to see him do that. And for over 20 years, he's been combining and learning and sharing all of these things. And he's told at festivals, he's told at schools, he's told at libraries, churches, special events in San Francisco and all across our nation. And I first heard you, Kirk, at Contra Costa Tail Spinners at Orinda Library. And I don't know, that was 10 years ago, no, that longer than 10 years ago. Yeah. And I just remember being blown away. And then I worked at Stagebridge, as many people here know, in Oakland as the storytelling director. And then when it was time I had to leave, I was like, I need to get somebody really good. And we got Kirk. And he took everything like way beyond anything that we had done while I was there. So it's, as I said, a pleasure, a thrill, and an honor to present to you Kirk Waller. Take it away, Kirk.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can turn my camera on just for a second, just so my group could say hi to everybody. Okay, if I can't figure it out, then I guess I'll have to turn the whole camera around, but hold on. Okay, let's see, how do I do this? Let me see. Maybe I'll just turn the, Elijah? I want to say hi to them for a second. Oh, right there, right? Yeah. All right. You guys say hi. All right.
Yay.
All right, thanks. So let me go ahead and jump in. They're a great group. So it is so for those of you, it's a youth drama workshop. So storytelling is such a big part of that as well. You can't have drama without a good story. And so what I wanted to do, and I am going to have to, sorry, I'm going to have to like jump out later just so we can continue here. But I want to tell a story of something that people ask me all the time, especially when I'm performing, more so schools than anywhere else, because kids ask this question. Two questions, probably the same question that adults ask kids is, what do you want to do when you grow up? How many of you have been asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? And what the other question that kids ask me is, how did you become a storyteller when I'm performing? Because like, that's not something like you grow up thinking, okay, when I grow up, I'm gonna go tell stories, especially for a living, right? And so I want to share with you how I became a storyteller. It's not my usual genre of literature or folk tales or classical tales, but it's one of my favorite origin stories. So I was in the 4th grade at Miss Major's class, Eden Gardens Elementary School in Hayward, California. The song we sang was the Roadrunner song. I even remember the song. It went like this. It said, a beep, a beep, a beep, 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 Eden Garden Roadrunners, a beep, a beep, a beep, 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 Eden Garden Roadrunners, beneath the flag of gold and green, the greatest school is plainly seen. A beep, a beep, a beep, 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 Eden Garden Roadrunners. And that's my song. It's okay if you guys laugh. They were like holding back. Okay. So in Miss Majors, she was my fourth grade teacher. And I kind of had I don't know if I had a crush, but I really liked Miss Majors. She was tall. She had this, not an afro. She was white. So it wasn't really like an afro, but these big, loose, red curls in her hair, big round glasses. This is like the 70s, a long, long time ago. So almost that 60s look. She had this turtleneck sweater. And she was a really good teacher. She was one of those teachers that inspire you, that challenge you, make an impression on you. And she was always trying to motivate us to learn. Now, the fourth grade is also where you start doing bigger projects, right? For me, that was when you start writing, not just sentences, not just learning how to write, but they were like essays, 1 page, 2 page. And so what she had us do for our first big project in the fourth grade was to create a game. It could be an outdoor game, it could be an indoor game, but you had to do a couple of things. You had to create the actual game. You had to make it. You had to write the directions on how to play the game. You had to write an essay, kind of background story of how you created the game. And then you had to come and bring it to class and demonstrate how it went. Now, and to make it more exciting, she made it a competition. So she's like, okay, class, so whoever has the best one, you guys are gonna vote for it. We're gonna have first prize, second prize, and third prize. And we'll see who has the best one. Now it's like to motivate, fourth graders to get it done. So like all fourth graders, I don't know how all fourth graders are, but I know when I was a fourth grader, the one thing that I was really good at was procrastinating. So I thought in my little 9-year-old mind, if I ignored it, it would just go away. And so I ignored it because it seemed like a big project, seemed kind of hard. So I went home, I did whatever fourth graders did. I played kickball, I played video games. Now, believe it or not, they did have video games in the 70s. There was one game. Now, I don't know if any of you old school people remember it. Some of you on video probably remember this. It was Atari. It was one game. It was called Pong. Now, let me explain it to you. You've never heard of Pong. Real technologically advanced. There was a black screen that had one line down the middle like a tennis court. On one side, there was like a 1-inch paddle, and you had a joystick that plugged in, and you just moved it up and down. You had another joystick for the other player, and it controlled the other paddle on the other side. And the little ball, which was square, would move and it'd go boop, boop. And then when your paddle, you'd move it up and you'd hit it, and it'll go boop. Right? That was our video games, right? And so I played video games, and I didn't think about the project at all. Now, Miss Majors was really good about telling us where we should be. Okay, class, by now, you should definitely have the name of your game. You should maybe at least have, how you're gonna play it, some instructions, and then she'd let us know a couple of days later. By now, you should have your materials built, your materials gathered. You should start putting things together. And then she did tell us all along the way, and I'm like, yeah. And I just procrastinated, put it off. 2 weeks later, became the day for the project to be done. And my heart started beating only when I was walking to school and I realized there were parents with other kids bringing like cones and games and boxes and all kinds of stuff to, for the games and board games and what are those things called? The little twisty things with fuzzy things on them, pipe cleaners, colored pipe cleaners. I'm like, uh-oh, maybe I should have done my project. But I still had some time because my last name was Waller. So she called on all the kids. They brought up their things. They were all proud. Everybody was clapping. Some parents in the back were like watching, and everybody would clap afterwards. And so she said, "Okay, Kirk, now it's your turn." And so this is what I thought of. I had probably 30, 45 minutes to think of something. And I said, I left mine at home. And that was all I could come up with. And she said, being a good teacher, she said, "Okay, Kirk, that's fine. You could just come up and tell us about yours. And then tomorrow you could bring it in." Thanks, Miss Majors. All right, so between the time that I was in my seat and I got up to the front of the class, my little brain was going. And that is the moment I became a storyteller. So I made up this game that up to that point did not exist. So I'm like, I took a piece of cardboard and it was called Galactic Empire Conquers the Earth. and I covered it with foil, and I put a paper clip in there as a spinner, and I had these little men that I put foil on some of them, and some of them didn't have foil. The ones that had foil were the aliens. The ones that didn't have foil, they were the earthlings. And the aliens were going to catch the earthlings, or the earthlings were going to catch the aliens. And so they went around the board as you spun, and the aliens were going to conquer the earth, or the earth was going to conquer the aliens. And by the time I got so excited, I was so excited, I got into this game. I was just making up all kind of stuff. I said there was these paper towel rolls and toilet paper rolls that I covered with foil, and they were like all these towers, and it was going around the game. And so by the time I got finished, all the kids were like so excited and anticipating. I have to tell you this is not a lie. When I finished, they voted. I took first place. I am not kidding. I took first place for a story for a game that did not exist. Now, I'm not saying you guys should do that. Not a good lesson. However, Miss Majors saw something because, of course, I got in trouble because I didn't bring it the next day because I never did. But a couple months later, she invited me and 2 other kids to come to an audition for a play up at Cal State Hayward. I think it's called Cal State East Bay now, called Cal State Hayward. And I auditioned to be a munchkin in a Wizard of Oz. And I made it. And that was the first play that I was in. Actually, Miss Majors drove us up to the audition. So she played a big part in getting that started. And so I kind of look back and I credit that for my first introduction to theater or storytelling or performance. Now, I got to flash forward to quite a few years ahead, maybe 20, maybe 30 years, but fast forward. I got an email and it said, hello, I used to teach at Eden Gardens Elementary School, and I was a 4th grade teacher. And I had someone in my class named Clerk Waller. Now, sometimes I see in the newspaper, this is back when newspapers were a little bit bigger, I see your name sometimes connected to storytelling or performing. And I was just wondering if this is my Kirk Waller. And I immediately, I wrote her back. I said, yes, it's me, it's Kurt. And so we exchanged emails. I asked her what she was doing. I think she was volunteering at the library at the same school once a week. And we exchanged emails, and she asked me how my brothers and sisters were doing. And I asked her, what teachers are still around and what teachers are still alive and what teachers may have left. And so we exchanged emails a couple of times. And then about maybe 3 months later, I was in a performance. And after the performance, this little old lady comes walking up to me. She's much shorter. Her hair is thinner. It's still kind of a little poofy afro. And she says, you don't know who I am. I'm Miss Majors. And I'm like, and so we just hugged and we cried and we sat and we talked. And I shared with her, about the story of, how I got involved in storytelling and thanked her. And she told me all kinds of stuff. That song that I sang at the beginning, she told me she made that song up. I didn't realize she made the school song up. And so I just credit Miss Majors for getting me a start in theater and performance and creativity. And I could have got in big trouble that day, but she looked beyond that and she saw something. And she was my inspiration. So wherever you are, Miss Majors, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. Oh my God. And thank you, Miss Majors. Let's all give a Yahoo for her, because without her, we wouldn't have you. Oh, maybe. Who knows? We never know. Right? What a beautiful story. And so fun to see, since we've had to go on Zoom, we don't have that special energy that comes when you're telling from a live audience, in front of a live audience, which we, always used to be an in-person, I shouldn't say a live audience, we're all live, but an in-person audience. And that was so fun to see because, you really, we could tell how much you were interacting with them. And I hope all of you there, those students are going to take that story with them. Okay, well, Kirk is in our backyard, pretty much in the East Bay, and now we have Manjiri coming to us all the way from India. She spends part of her year in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, I think, or Bay Area, where her son lives. But she's gone back to India. But through the magic, that this is the plus side of Zoom, we get. Thank you so much, Manjiri. That was lovely. Also so touching. And lovely.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we are going to stay in India for our next storyteller. I just want to say it's so it adds so much to our lives to have both of you join us, whether from India or from nearby. So Renu Narayan has become one of our stalwarts, and let's hear what are you going to tell us this month?
I will tell you something nice. Namaste, very good evening to all of you. Today I brought another story for you. I hope I haven't said the story before. Sa, pa, sa. 10-year-old Kalyan was singing. He thought he had the best voice in the world. He thought himself to be a great musician. His parents were kind to him, but not the others. One afternoon, he went to his father and said, Appa, I have a nice song for you. Shall I sing? His father was busy on the laptop. It was a Sunday afternoon. He said, okay, sing Kalyan. Sarega. Kalyan, I'm busy now with some work. Why don't you go sing for your mother? So Kalyan went to his mother. She was lying in the bedroom, resting after a hot day morning, cooking in the kitchen. Ma, I have a song for you, ma. Okay, sing da kanna. Sa, pa. Kalyan, I'm resting now. I want to sleep a bit. Can you please go outside and sing? Okay, ma. Kalyan went out. Sa-re-ga-ma. Hey, who's that? Shut up. My children are sleeping. What is wrong with you? Okay, chill, cool. And Kalyan went away. My friends are playing in the cricket field. I will go and entertain them. So he walked and went to the cricket field. Hey, I've been going to sing a song for you. Hey, you sing, will punch you, one of them said. Okay, going. And Kalyan walked away. He walked and walked. And he came to the local temple. The temple was shut. Nobody came to the temple in the afternoons, only in the mornings and evenings. So he went down to the front gate. But the front gate was locked. So he went to the rear. This was open, so he walked in, went and stood in front of the deity and started to sing. Sa-re-ga-ma-pa-da-ni-sa. He went on singing till he got fed up. Then he said, okay, now enough practice. I will go home. So he went back home. The next morning, the pujari, the priest, came to the temple. He unlocked the gate, went in, removed the curtain from the deity. Ayyo, what happened? Deva, what happened? Deva, what happened? Shri Ram, Ramiti, Rami, Manurami, Sahajanama, Tattulyam, Nama, Varanane. God, who normally stood in this pose, was now standing like this. And he said, wow, what happened? And today the Raja is coming and he is going to shout at me. Oh, Deva, please put your hands down, put your hands down. What am I going to tell the Raja? And soon the Raja was on his way. Raja Varare, Raja is coming. He got an idea. He ran of the temple. Raja, come Raja. Today is a very special day, Raja. What is it? Raja, today you must pray with your eyes closed. You will get whatever you pray for, Raja. I'm telling you. Okay. And Raja walked in the temple with his eyes closed. And two people are holding his hands. They guided him to stand in front of the deity. And he started to pray. Suddenly, Mosquito came and sat on his forehead. Hey! And he opened his eyes. Ayyo! How did this happen? I think my prayers didn't please the deity. He's holding his hands like this. Pujari, do something. Pujari was very happy. Oh, Raja, what did you do? What have you done? Nobody can do this. I also tried. No, no. I will try. I will try. Kadvale, Bhagwane, put your hands down. Put your hands down. What to do? My name is going to get spoiled, said the king. Wait, Raja, wait. I will call the mantras and the mantris. I will call them. All the pujaris came, the priests came, they did bhaja, bushkibat, chum, chim. They did all they could. They threw basma, they threw all kinds of things. But God stood like that. What to do? What will Rajas do? What do kings do? Come to the temple. Anyone who comes to the temple and can make God go back to his original position will get whatever they want. Of course, everybody in the village came. Nobody could do anything. Kalyan heard, I can also try. So he went to the temple. Pujari saw him and said, hey, you, Chinnapaya, small boy, get out. Raja, can I also try? Please, can I also try? Okay, try. All of you, please go out. Go. They all went out. And this fellow came and stood in front of the gate. Hey, put your hands down. Put your hands down. I said, I'm going to get something nice. Put it. Hey, God, please do some help for me. Put your hands down. Okay, I'm going to sing for you. Sa. God came back to his original position. I knew it. Went back to Raja. Come, Raja. Come. Huh? You did it? Smart fellow. What do you want? Raja, can I learn music at the palace? Of course. I will ask the best musicians to teach you music. Thank you, Raja. Thank you. He did to the Pujari. Pujari was angry. Finally, Kalyan got to start his musical journey. And that's the end of the story.
Thank you, Renu. Your face is so expressive. It's so much fun to watch you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right. Our next storyteller is Melinda. And good to see you back.
Thank you.
Please tell us a story.
Okay, great. Well, some of you who have heard me talk about my family may recall that my family for generations and generations was from the Jewish Latino ghetto in Los Angeles, which some people now say you need to call it a comunidad. So, comunidad. And the language of my family was English, Spanish, and Yiddish. And but that's only really part of the story. That was my mother's side of the family. And when I went to college in San Diego, and this was in the late 60s when it was prime time for the human potential movement. And I got very into that, and I took a lot of classes in psychology, and I went and sat in on encounter groups at the Center for the Studies of the Person, which is where Carl Rogers was. And I also took great interest in Gestalt therapy. So about a year before I was going to graduate from college, I applied to the Gestalt Institute in Canada as a trainee, and I got accepted. So I graduated in July, and before October, I was living in Canada on Vancouver Island in a small area called Duncan, BC, which is halfway in between Nanaimo and Victoria. And the Gestalt Institute had 3 locations, one of which was for college-age people, in other words, me. And we lived in a big, rambling farmhouse right outside of Duncan. And we had therapy groups in the morning and the night, and during the day, we helped the farm owners, Jack and Molly, run the farm. I remember one of the most wonderful favorite things that I would do was wake up really early in the morning before dawn and go and sit in the living room with a cup of mint tea and just watch the fog rolling over the hills of Jack and Molly's farm. Their farm was acres and acres and acres of land, and the fog rolling over the hills made them really almost look like waves because the fog was like this soft white meringue, and it just floated over the hills, making it look like surf, like the sea was just rolling into Jack and Molly's farm. Nobody else would be up that early in the morning, so I had the living room all to myself. And then as other people got up in the morning, we made breakfast, we had our therapy group, and then we took care of the farm, the organic orchards, and all of the animals. Jack and Molly had horses, cows, sheep, goats, cats, dogs, chickens, and I'm pretty sure I saw a duck or two hanging around. And we would take care of all of them. This was something I knew nothing about, having grown up in Los Angeles and then going to college in San Diego. But I quickly learned how to take care of all of the animals. And I grew to just love it, to love the peacefulness, the quiet, and the life with nature. And one day, I finished all my chores and I walked into the living room. And there was a woman I had never seen before. She was sitting on a Chesterfield, which is a sofa. And she was surrounded by, I don't know, 7 or 8 college-age guys who were just gaga over this woman. And it turned out her name was Lainey, and she was actually living at one of the other sites for the Gestalt Institute, the site where Fritz Perls was living. And she was 18 years old. I was 21. And she had been living at the Gestalt Institute since she was 12. Her mother had sent her to live there with Fritz because her home life was not a good home life. So she had been living there. She was very independent. She had never gone to school. Her mother, Lainey's mother, was German and moved to Vancouver when Lainey was 3 and kept Lainey at home with her because she couldn't speak English and she needed someone to not only translate, but she also felt like she needed a companion. So Lainey was, however, very worldly and very independent. And the very first time I saw her, something happened to me and I just became enraptured. I couldn't even speak, really. Lainey was very German looking. She was about 5'10", 140 pounds of pure muscle with big German bones, like her wrists were probably the size of Paul Bunyan. And she had a flight of freckles across her nose and across her cheeks. Her eyes were almond brown. And she had the most beautiful smile. And I could see why all of these guys that were in the College House program with me were just gaga over her. But she wasn't really interested in them. Instead, she and I became fast friends. And we spent almost all of our time together. She taught me so much just about plain living. Like she knew how to spin wool. And so we would go out and we would, we didn't shear the sheep, but we would pull wool off the already sheared sheep. And then we had a spinning wheel and we would spin it into yarn. And we would crochet or knit things. So I became a champion knitter. And we made hats and scarves for everybody that was there. And she also taught me a lot about living off the land and just about life in general. And she had built her own cabin across the street from where Fritz lived. And that's where she lived. but she would always come over at least 3 or 4 times a week, and we would ride the horses. Jack and Molly's farm was so big that there was a rainforest and a fern forest, and we would ride our horses through the fern forest. And I really was a bad horse rider. I was actually very afraid of horses, but I did this because Lainey was doing it. And then inevitably, I would end up having to get off my horse and walk it back to the barn, which she found hysterically funny. And she would ride up ahead and then come back just to have a laugh and make sure I hadn't like fallen into a ditch somewhere. I stayed at the Gestalt Institute for about 6 months. And then it was time for me to leave. And so I moved into Vancouver proper. It was around 1971, and there were a lot of expats living in Vancouver, mostly young guys who had moved up to Canada to avoid the draft. And so Vancouver, even though it was very provincial, was also very accepting. And I was able to get by pretty much by living in communal households, working at the local mom and pop health food store, maybe doing some massage, babysitting, all of these things that were kind of like under the table, I was able to do. And I stayed living in Vancouver for 3 more years. At that point, I had to come back home. Not only did I need to continue my education because I knew I was going to be a psychologist, and that required me to go to graduate school, but also because I kind of came to the place where I really couldn't support myself anymore while living in Canada. But at the same time, I had fallen in love with Lainey. I had also fallen in love with Canada, especially the West Coast, BC. I loved Vancouver. I love Vancouver Island. And then there are a ton of islands in the Georgia Strait, which is the area right between Vancouver, the mainland, and Vancouver Island. And Lainey and I spent a lot of time on the outer islands. So when I came back to the United States, Lainey came with me. We moved to Berkeley, and we started basically a life in Berkeley. I went to the Gestalt Institute of San Francisco for 3 years. I earned a master's degree. Lainey pretty much got involved in the local arts communities, and she stayed in Berkeley for 3 years. So then it was time for her to go back home. And she went back to Vancouver. She was now about 21 or 22. She got married. She had a little girl. And then when her daughter was about 2, she asked me to come up to visit with her, and I did. And her life had kind of fallen apart. She had a really bad marriage. And I just felt like I couldn't be at all involved. I was an intruder in a way in her life, and her husband wasn't very happy about that. So I stayed in Vancouver just for a few months, and then I came back to Berkeley. But for the next, I would say couple of decades, I just kept going back and forth to Vancouver. And during these times, I kept trying to become a citizen. I wanted to immigrate. I wanted to live in Canada, but I couldn't, because the only ways that you could immigrate were if you were sponsored by a Canadian family, and that I wasn't going to have that happen, or if you had enough money, you could start a business in Canada and bring revenue up to wherever you were living, and that wasn't going to happen. Or if you had a profession that they needed, and I didn't at the time, or if you were a refugee, and I wasn't. So it was really out of my ability, but it was really on my mind, and I kept trying. I kept trying for about 30 years, I think. I would go, when I would go up to Canada, I would always go to the consulate or to the immigration office and say, can I immigrate yet? Do I have enough points here? Do I qualify? And the answer was always, no, you don't. So I longed for it. And as I got older, it was probably one of the number 1 things on my bucket list. I really wanted to be Canadian. And in fact, I used to say, I want to die as a Canadian. That will make me happy. It just never happened. I didn't keep in touch with Lainey. She actually moved to Germany, but that's a whole other story. And I just kept going back and forth to Canada. I still go about every year and a half. And about 2 months ago, I was chatting with my hairdresser, who is relatively new to me. I've only known her for about 6 months. And she was telling me that her 18-year-old daughter was applying to colleges and that she was considering 3 in Canada, UBC in Vancouver, and 1 in Toronto and 1 in Montreal. And I said, oh, I love Canada. I just love it. And I said, you know, my dad was Canadian. And she said, really? I said, yeah, my dad was from Montreal. When my grandparents immigrated from Russia, their boat landed in Montreal. And that's where they got married. That's where they met. That's where they got married. And that's where they had their children and raised their family. And she said, you know what? I actually think that there is now a law in Canada that if you're a child of a Canadian, you can become a citizen. And I said, I can't believe it. And I didn't believe it. And I went right home and I, fluffed up my hair and I looked online, and lo and behold, 10 years ago, they passed a law that said, if you have a parent who is Canadian, you can become a citizen. And so I tried to apply online and I couldn't. And I contacted an immigration attorney and he said, yep, we do this all the time. And you definitely can apply. And for $2,700, we will process all your paperwork and get all your documents together and get you to and you can apply. And he said, we have really good news for you. We do this day in, day out. We know exactly what to do. And it'll only take us 3 months. And I thought, this is going to be the best $2,700 I have ever spent. I hired them like in mid-July. So by October, my paperwork should all be done. And I looked at some of my documents, like my birth certificate and my dad's military card. I found everything online. And on all of them, it says my dad was Canadian. So my dad's Canadian citizenship is now going to make me become a citizen. And the other thing the immigration attorney said to me is, we have really good news for you. And that is, you are already a Canadian citizen. And I just I'm thrilled. Woo! So I am going to be, I already am, by the way, Canadian. And that means I can live there, I could work there, I can vote, and I can have a Canadian passport if I want. And I also get to use the National Health Service if I
All
want.
right. Good for you.
Yay.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that journey
Yeah.
and the impact of a very powerful woman on your life. So our next storyteller is going to share with us about another very powerful woman who's had an impact on her life. And this is Linda Wright. And we're so glad that you're back. We haven't seen you in a while. And she's going to tell us about Fannie Lou Hamer.
Fannie Lou. Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Lou. I'm Fannie Lou Hamer for the moment. I was born in 1917 in Mississippi in the Delta region. In the Delta, the land was rich and fertile, but the Negro people, we were poor, desperate, and poor. Jim Crow, segregation, and justice laws had us chained up and locked up. But my parents, James and Luella Townsend, they just loved their children. Oh, they loved us and they were filled with wisdom. And they had a lot of children. I was number 20. I was the last one. My parents were sharecroppers. And when I was 6 years old, the owner of the plantation saw me playing with the younger children. And he said, Fannie Lou, yes, sir. How would you like a box of Cracker Jacks? I'll give you a box of Cracker Jacks if you go out there and pick me 20 pounds of cotton. And the next day, you just pick me a little bit more. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. And I went out there and I picked me 20 pounds and the next day, 60. Do you think I ever got that box of Cracker Jacks? And soon after that, I started school. Oh, I love school. Oh, I learned to read and to write and arithmetic. And I could recite poetry. And I won the spelling bees. But school for Negro children were only 3 months during the year. And it stopped at 6th grade. And some people will go through trash looking for food, but I went through trash looking for something to read after 6th grade. I wanted to read newspapers, magazines, anything I could get my hands on. Well, I grew up and I got married. And I married Perry Heyman. And we called him Pap. Oh, Pap and I, we just loved each other. He was a sharecropper on D. Marlowe's plantation. And I became the timekeeper because I knew how to do with the numbers. And I had a scale that was accurate. And so when the sharecroppers would come in with their long sacks of cotton, I would weigh it and I would give them the fair wages. But if the foreman was there or Mr. Marlowe himself, their scales were always off, crooked, 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 crooked. Oh, I hated that. I just hated that. One day I went over to Ma Tucker's house. She was my best friend. And I went over to her and she said, Fannie Lou, there was a freedom rider over here today. A freedom rider? You mean one of those men who rode the bus, like from Maryland all the way down to New Orleans? It was like a group of maybe 9 of them. And they were beaten and spit upon and almost lost their lives on many occasions in order for us to be able to sit where we want to. Yes, that man, James Foreman, he come over here. And Bob Moses was with them too. And they invited us to go to Williams Chapel for a mass meeting. I want you to come with me. What's the use, Tuck? It ain't gonna do no good. But later on, I repented of my bad attitude. And I told her, I'll come. And there was those 2 men up there just talking. And I listened to everything they had to say. I'm 44 years old, and for the first time in my life, I learned that the Negro has the right to vote. And when they asked for volunteers, I raised my hand. Oh, yes, I want to go. And a few days later, it was August 31st, another hot day in July. And we got on a bus. There was about 18 of us who had raised our hand. And we were driving down Route 49, going towards Indianola, where we were going to go and register. But out the window, there were trucks with white men and their guns. And there were dogs that were snarling at us, and the men were yelling obscenities, and everyone in the bus was going, wishing they were back home. But something in me just said, we're going to sing right now. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And we sang that song all the way down into Indianola. We sang Go Tell It on the Mountain, Let My People Go. Oh, we sang more and more of those freedom songs, and everyone's feelings got so much better. And at the county courthouse, the sheriff was there. And he told us only 2 could come in at a time. He registered. Well, I popped right out of my seat. I'm going in there. And one other person come in me, and they handed me the registrar form, and I filled out my name, and I filled out Marlowe D. Plantation, and I answered everything on that literacy test. And I paid my $2 for the poll tax. And there was the oral exam. What? No, I don't know nothing about no de facto law. My registration didn't take that day, but I come back. I was going to come back, and I come back. And one day I did get my registration card. I got it. But back on that bus, as we were going back to Louisville, we were stopped by the highway patrolman. And he gave the driver a ticket, $100 ticket for driving a bus the wrong color. Oh, God have mercy on us. Back at the plantation, Pap and the girls, they come running out and they said, Fannie Lou, Mr. Marlowe was here and he's mad at you. And then Mr. Marlowe, he drive up in his truck and he come out and he just slams his door and his face is as red and his eyes are bulging. And he says, Fannie Lou, I heard you went down there to register to vote. Mississippi ain't ready for that. We ain't ready for that. No, we aren't. You're going to have to go back down there and unregister yourself. And if you don't, you're going to have to get off of this plantation. And no. You're going to have to get off the plantation anyway. And I said, Mr. Mark, sir, I didn't go down there to register you. I went down to register myself. Ooh, I had to get off of that plantation that very night. And Pappy took me over to Ma Tucker's for me to hide out over there. But 2 weeks later, he come back and he says, I got a bad feeling. We got to take you somewhere else. So he drives me all the way up to Summer, where his relatives are, and I hide out up there. And I found out later that 16 bullets went into the wall of the room that I had stayed in at Mount. And those bullets went other houses too and hurt 2 girls. God have mercy on us. I was up there in Summer for a couple of months. And there was a knock on the door, and Charlie McLaren, who worked with SNCC, and SNCC is Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. He was on their staff, and he says, Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer, we really like what you did on that bus. Everyone's feelings were so down, but you got them raised up just with your voice and your singing. We want you to become a part of SNCC. We want to take you over to Tennessee to get some training and then bring you back to Louisville so you could be a civil rights worker. How would you like to do that? I'll pack my bags. Give me a minute. And when I came back to Louisville after being in Tennessee, I found out that I had a power inside of me that was heard all over Sunflower County. The people just got up their feet and they raised their hand wanting to go register to vote. And I went all around Mississippi and even out of the state doing registrations, teaching people how to do it and how not to be scared. Yes, you could lose your life. You could lose your home. You could be shot at. You could lose your job. But it's justice. We're trying to make things better for the future. We're tired of Jim Crow strangling us. And I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Oh, the people just followed me. But one time, I was coming back from a voter registration drive. And we were coming back to Louisville. We had stopped in Winona to get something to eat. Actually, I stayed on the bus. But several of us, there was about 8 of us, went on in to get some food at a white-only restaurant and used the washroom. The highway patrolmen and the police officers, they came. They started arresting everybody that got off the bus, and they arrested me, and they took us down to the Winona jailhouse. And you can hear the screamings and the lickings and the lickings and the screaming. Oh. And they put me in a cell with 2 Negro prisoners. And they handed the Billy Jack to one of them. And he began to beat me. Oh, and I had polio as a child. And I had to work my legs. But they ordered one of the Negro prisoners to sit on my legs, so I couldn't work my legs. And then I couldn't work my legs, so I started to scream. And the 2 of them beat me until they were exhausted. And I was in that prison when Medgar Eggers was gunned down when he was in his driveway. 1 shot blew out his car. 2 men came to get us out, but they were beaten and tortured. Andrew Young, he finally came, and they received his bail. And I told him, when I tried to get back into his car, and my kidneys were so sore, and he said, "You can't take me home. I don't want my family to see me looking like this." Oh, no, no, no. But do you think that experience stopped me from being a civil rights worker? Oh, no, God have mercy on all their souls. I am continuing on as a civil rights worker. We got more work to do. We got the Freedom Summer of 1964 coming to get prepared for. The end.
Thank you, Linda.
Well,
I know it's not the end. It's the end of your story for today, but
yes.
I hope you come back and tell us more. And I just have to say, you conveyed a woman of such strength, courage, and joy. Very appropriate
Yes.
right now.
And today was actually the day that Fannie Lou Hamer spoke at the Democratic National Convention in Atlantic, New Jersey was the day.
No kidding.
Yeah.
What do you know?
60 years ago.
60 years ago. Thank you so much, Linda. All right, we have one more story tonight, and that's from Sarah Armstrong. And so I just want to also say that Sarah is you're the chair, right, of the Storytelling Association of California. And if it was not for the Storytelling Association of California, we would not be on this Zoom account. And we're always grateful and thanks. And anybody who's not a member of SAC, you should definitely join. And Sarah, maybe after your story, you can put, or I'll put it in. I'll put the SAC website in. All right. But right now, Sarah, tell us a story.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you. So lovely to be here. This is just lovely. Thank you. There was a young man who was a farmer, as had been his father and his grandfather before him. His grandfather got the land and started planting hay. And so the family grew hay for all those generations. Now, there was another thing that was very special in the family. Grandfather had a watch that was silver and gold, and the little stem that you wound or set the time had a little tiny ruby on it. And this was a treasure in the family. Grandfather used to sit his son, this young man's father, on his lap before he went to sleep at night and read him a story or tell him a story. And that little boy would sit with his head against his father's chest and listen to the story and also hear the tick, tick, tick of that very special watch. Well, when he grew up, his father gave him the watch, and he repeated the same with his son. He would bring him onto his lap before going to bed. He would tell him a story or read him a story, and that little boy would put his head against his father's chest and hear that tick, tick, tick of that watch. All the men kept that watch with them all the time, except at night when they slept, and they would put it on the nightstand beside them, beside the bed. Well, this young man was getting ready for the next day when all of the hay that had been grown and baled and gotten ready would be picked up by the trucks to take them to the farms to feed the cattle in different parts of the county. So he went into the barn and he patted the pocket on his overalls where he kept that watch. And it was a ritual that he did every time he went in and out of the barn. And so he patted that watch and he went into the barn and he spent some time making sure the bales were stacked just right, that all of the hay was ready to go, that it was going to be an easy thing for those trucks to come in and load the hay and take it off the next day. Satisfied with his job, he started out of the barn and he went to pat his watch, but it was gone. He searched the pocket, it wasn't there. He searched his overalls, the pockets, his boots, his socks, everything. The watch was gone. So he spent some time looking around where he had been, looking at the bales, looking at the floor, every corner he searched. He could not find that watch. Oh, he had no idea what he was going to do, but he went out of the barn and saw in a field nearby, there was a group of children playing. And he called them over and he said, "Would you help me? Would you help me?" And they came and he said, "I've lost my watch. I know it's in the barn. Can you look and can you find it for me?" And so the children went into the barn and they went high and they went low and in the corners and on the ground and around the bales. Nobody could find the watch. So they came out and told the farmer that they had failed, and he thanked them for trying and sent them back to play where they had been in the field. But one little boy hesitated and turned around and said, "Do you mind if I go in by myself and see if I can find the watch?" The farmer said, "Of course, thank you so much." So the little boy went in to the barn, and our farmer sat down on a bench nearby trying to figure out what he was going to do. And not too long afterwards, that little boy came out and said, "Is this the watch that you're looking for?" And it was indeed. And the farmer took it and put it in his pocket and he said, "Thank you so much. How did you find it?" And the little boy said, "Well, I went in and I sat down and I just got really quiet and I could hear a tick, tick, tick. So I knew right where to go to get that watch back for you." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. What a perfect last story about the power of listening, because in storytelling, there's the storyteller, there's the story, but there's no storytelling without the listener. Most
Right.
important. So thank you to everybody who came as a teller and as a listener.
Yes.
We're gonna close, but before, Sally, you get to say your closing goodbye, I invite everybody, if you can, and you can still hear me, to unmute yourself, to put yourself on camera if it works for you, because we are going to sing happy birthday to Sally because she
Oh,
turned 90 this week. Okay, so I know that singing on Zoom is not the greatest, but let's give it a try anyway. So it may not sound the best, but it's coming with all our love and appreciation. So 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy
Birthday, dear
birthday,
Sally.
Happy
Birthday
to
to
you.
you.
That was
And
glorious.
You'll never forget.
So much.
Can I add something, Liz? Can I add something?
all right, go ahead.
Yeah, it's also my granddaughter's birthday today. She turns 6, and we've been invited to her school as grandparents to go and say a few words. So, yeah, so I'm very excited about that. And happy birthday, Sally.
Oh,
Oh,
Happy 90th. Cool.
wonderful,
That's a
wonderful.
beautiful.
How did you get that?
Got a picture of Sally.
Marnie is sharing her screen. Thank you, Marnie, for being our tech host this month as
The birthday hat.
that was a special birthday plate, right? All right, Sally, turning it over to you.
Good night, everybody. May you all have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next month. Thank you so much for choosing us and coming to tell your wonderful stories. And thank you, every listener. We really appreciate it. Tailspinners, yay.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.